Alright, we're here to make up for the first video, which, which if I remember correctly, was actually at this point, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Well, either way, we are back here to make up for it. This time I have Francine with me. Francine.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Anyways, so with this, let's start off basic. So let's go with the two we have on just directly on the prompt here. We have Eevee and SCP-999, the Tickle Monster. Now, what do you think of this?
Interesting.
I guess we're not making up for last video.
Right, so I think Eevee and SCP-999 would actually get along really well together.
I mean, of course. SCP-999, of course, is, well, harmless overall. And if it does happen to accidentally hurt someone, then it feels bad. Its official SCP wiki page will state that if it ends up hurting someone, then it will basically feel bad for it, as far as to cower or whimper.
That basically Eevee is the SCP-999 equivalent to, like, basically Eevee is Pokemon's own SCP-999, except for the fact that it's just not a slimy gelatinous blob.
Well, you gotta give 999 credit for that. That's one of the things that makes it cute.
Yes, it's also one of the things that make them different.
Yep.
Is that, well, actually, is 999 even technically considered biological? I mean, maybe.
Well,
but
I say probably not, but as most people describe it, most people like to consider it a he.
not what I meant, but okay. I was actually referring to, like, it's, like, is a slimy gelatinous material, would that be considered,
Oh,
like...
you're talking like material itself. Well, I mean...
Yeah, would that be considered biological? I don't know. It'd probably be considered natural.
I say it's natural to its being, but it's more sentient than it is material. So it's more being than what it would be object.
Well, yeah. I just don't know if it'd be, like, technically considered a... Like, if... Well, probably biological in its own self, yeah. But I don't know if someone would technically consider it biological because, well, I mean, it is just, like, gelatinous, anomalous gelatinous slime stuff. Like, it doesn't have, like, it doesn't have, like, biology or like, fucking, what's that word I'm looking for? Shit, what's that word I'm thinking of? Shit. It's right on the tip of my tongue.
Be prepared, people. The next 30 minutes is going to be Francine trying to figure out what this word is. Look,
anatomy,
if you can't remember the word, just go on with it.
Yeah. I just remembered it's anatomy.
Ah.
It doesn't have, like, biological, like, it doesn't have, like, biology or, like, it doesn't have biological anatomy or anything like that like Eevee does. Because we know, like, Eevee is a cute, fleshy little fox creature that is very obviously biological and has anatomy and all that. SCP-999 on the other paw doesn't really have that. It's not really that kind of creature.
999 is basically a blob of slime with a candy addiction.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
Which
this guy eats candy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, I know we're not. I know this is like SCP and Pokemon, but I just got to put it out there for the fact of it. Just like freaking Nutty from Happy Tree Friends. Just fucking candy all the time.
Just the less,
like,
less bouncing off the walls for candy.
Yeah, less nutty. Less fucking nutty.
Yeah.
Like SCP-999 is not going to turn into a fucking tornado just over the taste of one little bloody crystal of sugar.
It's Gangster 999. You mess with this candy, he's pulling a Glock out on you.
Yep. Well, freaking Nutty would pull out a bloody candy cane and probably beat the shit out of you. Either that or he'd just fucking be like, no, that's mine. I'm having it. But anyway, this is not about Happy Tree Friends, so...
Yeah. What do you think about the overall interaction between these two? Say like half the Pokemon we're going to talk about is contained in the SCP Foundation. So like, we say these two were put in the same room. What do we expect to probably happen?
I think they'd get along real well. What the fuck? I already just said that. But nonetheless, I think they'd probably share candies with each other because Eevee does also like candies, especially even more so when it evolves into Sylveon. Let's say, well, putting Eevee with SCP-999 would be the quickest way to evolve your Eevee into a Sylveon, that's for sure. Because it's a friendship evolution, but also requires itself to know a fairy-type move, such as Baby Doll Eyes. So if you were to like have your Eevee know Baby Doll Eyes, for example, because it's a fairy-type move, and you put it with SCP-999, it's going to grow very happy and friendly very quickly, and it's probably going to maybe almost instantly evolve into Sylveon right there on the spot.
Yeah, and it ain't because 999 gave Eevee a sugar rush.
But they sure would enjoy freaking candies a lot more together when it evolves into a Sylveon, because Sylveon itself has a sugar rush whenever it tastes enough candy. Or lollies, as we say in Australia.
Essentially, we put these two in a room. They don't know who they are. It also kind of depends on who acts on it first. Now, essentially, from what the wiki page says, if 999 acts first, overall it usually just, of course, it's got the tickle monster as its name for a reason. And as it says in its wiki page, it will try to make individuals happy by enveloping their bodies with itself from the neck all the way down to the feet, and just to tickle their entire body from there to make them happy. Or, of course, other ways, but that's how it's mainly described.
Yeah. But now here comes a bit more of a complicated part.
What would that be?
We know there's only one... Well, we know there's only one SCP-999, right?
Yep.
However, there's millions, possibly trillions of Eevees. And so, an Eevee, they all have like, some of them might be the same in personality, some of them might be different. They've got all sorts of different personalities, like stuff like that. Like, if it's a Eevee that likes to be happy and likes to communicate, then yeah, they're going to obviously communicate with each other and get along very well, and they're probably going to love each other very much. And
yeah. And it doesn't matter what personality they actually have. if SCP-999 finna tickle them, they're gonna laugh about it. It's
Oh
literally
yeah,
like an
definitely.
anomalous
Yeah.
effect. Technically, it's not an anomalous effect, but at the same time, it kind of is if you think about it enough. Because literally,
Yeah.
999 has even made 682 laugh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like their personalities wouldn't really matter once SCP-999 really touches them. The only time their personality might matter there is before it touches them. If you get like a Eevee that's usually particularly grumpy, which is very rare because that's not Eevee's nature. Eevee by nature is a very friendly and curious Pokemon, but there is rare cases where you might find a bit of a aggressive, grumpy one.
Now, essentially, if
At
we
first,
start throwing in EVs with SCP-999, are we going to start getting a whole bunch of random Sylveon evolutions, or are we looking at something more kind of randomized?
it'd be it'd be probably more randomized because an Eevee can only evolve into a Sylveon if it has a Fairy type move. If the
Yeah.
Eevee doesn't have a Fairy type move, it's probably going to evolve into something else.
So essentially,
It'll,
it has to have a certain move for it to evolve into a certain thing, but SCP-999 is still a good way to quickly speed up the evolution process.
yeah, yeah, because like I said, Eevee can only evolve into a Sylveon if it also knows a Fairy type move. If it doesn't, then depending on what time of the day it is, if it's like morning or night, because Espeon and Umbreon are both friendship evolutions, which means depending on whether it's day or night, it would, if it doesn't have a Fairy type move, it's probably going to evolve into an Espeon or an Umbreon instead.
Hmm.
If it's day, it's going to evolve into an Espeon. If it's night, it's going to evolve into an Umbreon.
Hmm.
And if it does happen to be one of those particularly grumpy, rare EV cases, and it evolves into an Umbreon through that method, once it's been out of contact with 999 for long enough, it's going to get very aggressive and very hostile. Because the last thing you want is a grumpy Umbreon, because they are a dark type, and if they are grumpy, or like if they're that kind of particular personality, they are known to be very vicious and very hostile, and will probably kill without a second thought.
Now, say we
So a grump,
have an SCP that we stick SCP-999 into that's able to copy objects. What are we gonna do if an entire horde of 999 starts showing up?
sure I can't on that. That at that point, I'd just freaking like at that point, I'd just forget about putting Eevee in there, and then I'd just go and get a whole freaking army of Dittos and put them in there.
Well, let's say we're talking like a grumpy Eevee again. If we have one specific 999 to hang around them, what do we expect? Do we expect the uh, EV to, somehow eventually turn on 999, whether or not it's there, or just still fall under the same joyous effects that 999 produces?
Although, if we are also including if the Eevee does happen to evolve, if it evolves into an Umbreon and it is one of those particularly grumpy ones, Umbreon is one of the rare cases that seem to have the power to be immune to something like SCP-999's abilities, which means it doesn't matter how much he tries to interact with a grumpy Umbreon, because of what Umbreon's capable of, it's not going to be able to do anything to it, and Umbreon is probably going to attack it and try and kill it,
And what
which is
happens
impossible.
if that starts to upset? Now, I'm not saying like make them angry, but I mean like make them sad. What if that starts making the 999 instances sad? Then what are we gonna have on our case?
The Umbreon, if it, like I said, if it is one of those grumpy ones, he's not going to care. He's going to keep attacking it. Or she, if it's a female.
Well, I'm not saying specifically how it would react. I'm saying how they would react, as in all the 999 instances. Because they're trying to
Probably,
make this
that pro-
individual happy, but they're not able to do it. What are they going to do then?
yeah, in that situation, they would just probably get all sad and try to escape it.
Yeah, because there's some things. Yeah, I guess there's some things that you can't make happy, whatever you try. I mean, you can't throw. I mean, of course, you can't do something like throw 999 in with 173 and expect any results. 173 can't even express emotion.
That's all it is just a bloody statue, a sculpture. I'm
Yep.
actually still surprised it was able to have the effect that it does on 682.
But, you think 173 produces blood and fecal material. So we are talking about the possibility that it's not just a statue, it's more of a maybe possibly more of a living organism. Though, as it's been described in the wiki file, it's been kind of, well, anomalous. Now, say we're going back to the Grumpy Umbreon situation. What happens if it ends up meeting 173?
Well, the grumpy Umbreon is obviously going to try to attack it, but once it realizes it can't do anything to it, it's probably just going to. The grumpy Umbreon will probably just be like, you know what, whatever, just leave me alone.
As soon as it turns around, 173 comes out of nowhere, makes that head turn a full 160, 180. I mean, bleh. That's 20
But
degrees off.
since we since we are talking about 173 for a moment, since it's a statue or sculpture, is it going to actually be able to reach down to an Umbreon's level to even snap its neck? Is it going to actually be able to reach there?
I
I
mean,
don't know if it can do that.
it's done different things. It's snapped to 682's neck.
Oh yeah, but that was. I think that's because 682 was big enough for it to do that.
Well, it's also done the same with 096.
True.
And we're talking 096 has basically its bones are unbreakable. Yet somehow 173 still breaks its neck. I say that quote unquote
But
because it breaks. We don't know if it actually breaks it, but either way, if 096 happens to have a broken bone, that thing's gonna heal straight up.
oh yeah.
Now, what
And
Pokemon do
then
you think would probably actually? Okay, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, but then we are talking about anomalous creatures here, so even if 096's bones are indestructible, we are still talking about another anomalous creature as well. It might be able to ignore the rule of indestructible bones.
Yeah, but going back to 173 for a second. Tell me, what Pokemon do you think would be a decent match for it? And no, I'm not talking about bringing in godlike beings automatically. I'm talking something that would be directly on its level, or at least close to it.
Yeah, I know. We established that. Yeah, wasn't it yesterday, or was it? I think it was yesterday. Um, that one. Well, maybe maybe Rhyperia, because Rhyperia, well, actually, probably any, definitely Onyx, for sure, or even Steelix. They don't have bones. Onyx is made completely of rock. I think basically any rock type Pokemon that you don't expect would have bones would probably be a good matchup. Like Onyx and Steelix, for example, although Steelix is also a steel type too.
I mean, chances are, if it has a neck, 173 is probably going to find a way to snap it.
Yeah. Although most rock type Pokemon don't have necks, weirdly enough. Like, maybe, oh, what's its name again? Freaking Boldor or something like that, or Boldor, Gigalith, that's the one. I mean, I don't know, I actually haven't taken notice if Gigalith technically has a neck or not. I'll have to look into that one.
No,
I don't think it does.
That's strange now that I think about it. I mean, if it doesn't have a neck, is 173 still going to be able to snap its quote-unquote neck? Or will it do something else? There's not really been any establishment on that. Because I don't think the Foundation has done any tests where 173 has went up against an item or individual that can see it, look at it, but does not have a neck. I think we have yet to actually get to said situation, but
But yeah, I don't think 173 can snap a non-existent neck. So I don't think the neck snapping would work on something, say, like Onyx, for example.
Would you still say 173 is probably a threat, though?
Possibly, if it can do other things rather than just snap neck, it could possibly do something.
Now, I want to bring up a couple situations with 173 right quick, because there's been some complex questions with it, and I feel like this is kind of worth diving into. Say, like, you could pick a Pokemon to put up against this that would probably be on said level that could probably take it on. But say we start bringing in the fact that 173 can anomalously clone itself.
Yeah. I know there is some rock-type Pokemon that don't have necks that can use Double Team, but the problem with that is that the clone things that it makes it of itself when it uses Double Team are not actual real physical clone things, but they can still do damage when they attack.
Yeah.
So maybe a rock type Pokemon who 173 knows it can't beat could possibly use Double Team enough. I think Onyx can use Double Team, I don't remember. But maybe it can use Double Team enough to confuse 173, and then they either it would just... Well, I wouldn't say 173 will get scared and run away. I wouldn't say that.
Obviously not.
Because it can't really go anywhere if you're looking at it, obviously.
And it can't really show emotion either.
Exactly. But it may still be confused. Because I don't think confusion technically counts as an emotion.
Technically,
so
it's a living creature. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to create blood or fecal material. And even if it is anomalous, then you would have to still have to believe that there's something about it that's living, other than it just being rebar and rock.
Yeah. Rhyperia, maybe. Actually, can Rhyperia learn Double Team? I don't know. I might have to look that one up real quick.
Alright. While you're looking that up, I want to bring up another situation before we go back to the clones. Now, what if we were to go into the question of slapping a picture of SCP-096 on 173's face? What then? And what Pokemon do you think would even stand a chance against that? Because, I mean, you look at 173's face, you're going to be looking at a picture of 096, and that's going to trigger 096 to actually come and find whatever looked at it. But at the same time, you look away from it, 173 is going to find a way to either A, break its neck if it has a neck, or B, destroy it in some manner. Because if it still tries to do something to something that doesn't have a neck, either it won't be able to do anything to it, or it's just going to find a way to destroy it. But say it could destroy it, what then?
Not entirely sure. But okay, so yeah, here. Moves learnt by TM, yes. Rhyperia can learn double team. So, Rhyperia doesn't have a neck, technically, per se. So, it could possibly be a good fight for 173, especially the fact that it can use double team. And it can also learn Surf. So, if we were to put those two in battle and assume them in like Pokemon terms of battle, 173 would technically be considered a rock type, which means it'd be weak to ground type moves as well as water type moves, both of which are types of moves that Rhyperia can learn, because Rhyperia, oddly enough, despite it being 4 times weak to water, can learn the water type move Surf.
But of course, we're not considering the SCPs are going by Pokemon logic, because they've never been in Pokemon whatsoever, and of course don't follow by that logic.
I was just making a example. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, considering if it was, that would make sense, but we're talking about like 2 different realms going up against each other.
Yeah. And since we're not supposing that the SCP would go by Pokemon logic in this situation, the Surf wouldn't be able to hurt SCP-173, but it would possibly still be able to wash it away, maybe, because, you know, it's stone, it's rock, and water easily washes that stuff away anyway.
But it could still move if it's looked away from, even if it is knocked over. Now, they haven't actually done an official test of what if we just knocked over 173. Chances are, if you still look at it and you go to move away from it, it's just going to end up standing straight back up again, and then there goes your neck.
Well, of course, it's anomalous. It's anomalous for a reason.
Pushing it over, I highly doubt it's going to have any effect on an anomalous entity.
Yeah. Of course, I will say here right now, though, quickly, if we're going to bring 682 properly into an equation in this video, then and only then might I include like God Pokemon, because I don't really think there's any like non-God Pokemon that could like actually do anything really to 682.
The worst damage
only in that situation would I bring up like a God Pokemon.
The worst damage that 682 has been through is the test against 096, if I remember correctly. And 682 was literally torn to bits.
Think about the test that they did with 682 against the Gate Guardian. Because against the Gate Guardian, 682 was reduced to just a simple head.
Oh yeah, okay, that's a little bit worse than the encounter with 096, but you still gotta say the test between
Oh yeah,
682
it's
and
definitely
096 was still did a number on 682. I say did
yeah,
a number because of
definitely
course it basically 096 the Shy Guy tore apart the unkillable reptile, but at the same time,
yeah.
of course, the unkillable reptile has the ability to literally make itself immune
Regenerate.
to whatever did damage to it somehow, and then
Yeah,
regenerate
also,
afterwards.
and it can also take its it can also steal the power or the ability as well that was used against it.
It's
Which is probably why it wouldn't technically be considered a good idea to put it against something like a god Pokemon, because he'll still be able to take the powers and abilities from it. But at the same time, a god Pokemon is probably also the one who has the best chance of actually defeating 682 properly.
Now, I've seen a couple things. I doubt they're actually true, but at the same time, knowing what 682 has been through before, I wouldn't doubt it's possible. But erasing 682 from existence has somehow even proven to be ineffective, as somehow 682, again, not saying this is a canon thing, but somehow most of these depictions end up with 682 reforming itself. And we're talking it being erased. Somehow it comes back.
Well, see, 682 is in a very similar situation to what Dark Matter from Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon is, in the fact that as long as things like hatred and negativity exist, it exists.
And it basically lives for that, 682 does.
Yeah.
It hates
If we were
anything and
to,
everything that breathes.
yeah. Now that does give me a theory. That does have me bring up. That does have me think of a theory. If we were to find a way to remove all hatred, negativity, and stuff like that from existence, that could possibly remove 682 from existence as well.
Yeah,
The same as it would also remove dark matter from existence. The dark matter, I'm specifically referring to the dark matter from Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon,
yeah.
because it's built and feeds upon negative and hatred, like negativity and hatred.
Hmm.
Because we've already seen that fucking SCP-999, when in contact with 682, removes all negativity and hatred from it.
Hmm.
So that's what that's another thing that I have backing up my theory, is that if we were to remove all negativity and hatred from existence, that could possibly remove SCP-682 completely from existence.
Hmm. You know,
And there
earlier.
are some Pokemon who are capable of doing such things,
Hmm.
such as a mythical Pokemon called Diancie, or even, well, even some non-legendaries, even some non-mythicals can sort of do that. Like Ordino, for example, is just a regular normal type Pokemon who just so happens to have the capabilities of removing hatred and negativity from a person.
Hmm.
And they are known to be able to make any being happy as well, just with their heal pulse move alone.
Hmm.
So it is possible that an Ordino may have a similar effect on 682 as what 999 does.
Yeah. You know, I was just thinking about it. What do you think would probably happen if a Pokemon happens to get infected by, like, a plague or a virus from the SCP universe? Let me bring in three examples for this. The zombie plague, which I know is kind of cliche, but 008 exists, so we're bringing it in. The flesh that hates, or the clockwork virus. Let's say those three, for example. Let's say one of those breaks out and infects a Pokemon. What are we expecting to happen there? And also depending on, like, what Pokemon it is. Excluding God Pokemon, of course, because they could just Thanos snap that away, just like, please.
Yeah, we're going to be excluding God Pokemon with that one. Now, there are some legendaries and mythicals that are also not god-like Pokemon. They're not like gods. Like Latios and Latios, for example. They're really good at healing and making people happy and that. And so, while they are legendary, they're not like gods or anything like that. So, we can include them. Probably because Latias is, as we know, because she's one that we introduced into the RP, of course. As we know her, she can pretty much cure and heal any disease out there. So she could possibly be able to cure those three viruses. She could possibly be able to cure a Pokemon of any of those viruses.
Well, I could see the zombie plague being a great possibility. The flesh that hates might be a little bit more difficult, but what about the clockwork virus? What if that's already partially turned a Pokemon into a machine? How exactly can you cure that? Because even though it's a virus, at the same time, it's turning something into a machine. How are you exactly
Okay,
going to
maybe
cure that?
in that situation, maybe not there, but as long as it only partially turns a Pokemon into a machine and does nothing else, I don't think there's really any harm in it, honestly. I mean, yeah, sure, obviously the Pokemon is not going to want that, so it is obviously going to upset the Pokemon if it doesn't, happen to, like, touch the heart or the brain or that. It's obviously going to upset the Pokemon, but in the alternate case, it's also, if it doesn't do anything other than just turn something partially into machine, it's probably not really going to be that much of an issue anyway.
Well, what the clockwork virus essentially does, as long as it's there, it's going to keep spreading until it essentially turns whatever it's infected fully into a machine.
In that case, as sad as it is, and if the parts of the Pokemon required for it to still have thought process and all that isn't touched, in that situation, I'm pretty sure the Pokemon would gladly sacrifice itself to prevent that from happening to anything else. And so, as sad as it is, we could freely kill the Pokemon and get rid of it, completely destroy any trace of it.
Okay, guards, execute termination.
Because as long as the situation is explained to the Pokemon, and as long as it still has its feelings at least, and that, it'll probably willingly sacrifice itself.
And what happens if it ends up infecting like a more powerful Pokemon, and then at the same time the Pokemon is no longer running at its own mind, and whatever has infected it has it attacking stuff?
Obviously, in that case, we're going to have a major battle on our hands. Or paws.
Now, I guess this is a good time to bring this up. I talked to Amy earlier, a split second, about this. She suggested that I bring up Lucario, Cinderace, or Zeraora in this. So, what about one of those three? What happens if they end up getting infected by this? And then, like, out of one of the three that I mentioned earlier, clockwork virus, flesh that hates, or zombie plague, they get fully infected and then go on starting attacking others. What are we going to do then? We're talking more like up there instead of just like your standard or cliche Pokemon. But at the same time, we're also not
Zeraora
talking
is,
god tier.
yeah, Zeraora is a mythical Pokemon, but it is not a god tier one, so we can in fact include it. Um, Now, if let's talk about the zombie one. If the zombie virus was to infect it and it just makes it like a regular zombie, then it's probably not going to be that big of a threat, other than the physical strength.
What if the zombie happens to still use said abilities the Pokemon had when it was technically alive?
Well, then it would be more of a threat.
And we're also
But
talking about like how the
since
zombie virus would spread. Are we including it spreads by scratches or just by bites? Because I would say overall the zombie plague also probably spreads through scratches. Because as long as it opens up the
probably, yeah.
skin to the bloodstream, that's going to start going through the bloodstream.
Well, let's look at Cinderace, for example, with this one. Yeah, Cinderace doesn't have claws, really, so it's not going to be able to scratch. But they do have some pretty sharp teeth, so yeah, it would only be able to spread it via bite, because unless the virus has a way of infecting its attacks as well, if it doesn't like affect the attacks, it's not going to turn you into a zombie by kicking a pyro ball at you.
Yeah, that's just going to incinerate the individual it's targeting.
Yeah, unless, of course, the individual it's targeting happens to be another Pokemon that resists fire type attacks, such as a water type or a rock type,
Still,
or even a
though,
dragon type.
a zombie plague being infected through Pokemon is still going to be a big issue because there
Yeah,
is technically no zombies in Pokemon overall. That especially ones, if there happens to be any, I haven't heard about it, and chances are it doesn't spread. So chances are they'll be dealing with something they haven't dealt with before. So they're already kind of missing the knowledge of how to avoid it in the first place, but ignoring the knowledge, we're thinking into like, okay, this is breaking out. How exactly are we going to predict what to expect and how to handle this?
there are a couple of Pokemon that you may possibly be able to consider as zombies.
Or
Like,
undead?
maybe. Well, yeah. Well, there's definitely a lot of Pokemon that are considered undead. All the ghost types.
Oh yeah.
Especially, well, there is probably others, I just can't think of them at the moment, but the closest one at the moment that I can think of to a zombie would be like Hisuian Zoroark, which is basically, it in itself is basically said to be an undead Zoroark.
Hmm.
A Zoroark, and even Zoroark as well. Hisuian Zoro and Zoroark. Um, they're basically said to be undead, which is why they come back in ancient Sinnoh, which was known as Hisui back then. It's it's why they come back as ghost normal types.
Hmm.
And what they do is they they actively hunt to kill, and then they cover themselves in their victim's blood. The red parts on their fur, that's the blood of their victims.
Now, if Now, I say the zombies would have a lesser chance of winning if they're going up against the ghost types, obviously.
Most ghost types can't be touched. Well, not by regular means.
Now, going back to the main three that Amy wanted me to mention, we've got a zombified Lucario, a zombified Cinderace, and a zombified Zeraora. Who the heck are you thinking might be the most dangerous to actually be in this case?
Definitely Zeraora, because he is a mythical Pokemon, and while not godlike, he is still pretty strong. Like, he's strong enough to beat a Guzzlord, which is one of the most powerful Ultra Beasts in the history of Pokemon. He's strong enough to beat a Guzzlord on his own.
Hmm.
So a zombified Zeraora would definitely, probably, if it can still use its powers and ability, a zombified Zeraora would probably still be the biggest threat.
Hmm.
Especially if they... Well, technically, its own Z-move doesn't exist. Zeraora is a tricky case, because Zeraora was originally meant to have its own Z-move, which ended up getting scrapped because it was too powerful, and they just didn't have the time to fix it. So they just scrapped his Z-move altogether. If we were to include his planned Z-move, he, while still wouldn't be technically godlike, he would still be pretty powerful, pretty OP. Probably even powerful enough to do a number to 682. And even 096 possibly. Put it this way, he had one shot frickin' 106 every single time. You can imagine why they scrapped his Z-move.
Yeah, though you said 106. 106 is a dangerous entity to touch in the first place. Remember, 106, the old man, is literally made of a corrosive material. If even a Zeraora is planning to straight up attack it, even if by the nails themselves are probably going to start corroding. It's probably not a good idea even in that situation.
Well, no, see, most Z-moves aren't technically physical. Like, well, yeah, they... In Pokemon terms...
Well, yeah, obviously, if we're talking about ranged, then yeah, of course. Or, like...
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we're talking about, like, physical attacks against 106, that right there is a death wish. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, because Zeraora's Z-move, like most Z-moves, wasn't actually, in realistic terms, wasn't physical. Basically, Zeraora's Z-move was a extremely powerful bolt of lightning that would freaking one-shot every Pokemon on the opponent's side of the field. And so, given that it would obliterate things like that so easily, he wouldn't, if he was to have his Z-move, he wouldn't have any problems against 106, because he could just keep spamming it every time 106 comes back. And he would only need to do it once, and it would just completely annihilate 106. So that's why he'd be able to do quite a big damage number on even 682 and 096.
Yeah. Jumping back to that zombie plague right quick, how exactly would we expect a Lucario and a Cinderace to walk out of that? Not saying walk out of it safely, but if they end up getting zombified, what do we expect from those zombified states? And just like how I mentioned with the Zeraora, they keep the abilities they had in the past. But of course now they're just walking corpses.
Well, we'll compare these zombified versions of Pokemon to 106, the best chance a zombified Lucario would have against 106 is using Aura Sphere, since it's not a physical attack. In terms of Pokemon, it's a physical attack, but it's, well, I think it's a physical attack. I don't remember, actually. But, like, using moves such as, like, Focus Blast or Aura Sphere, Lucario wouldn't have any problems, well, maybe would have a tough battle, but, like, wouldn't have any problems from 106's corrosive abilities if it used something like Focus Blast or Aura Sphere. Bone Rush is an interesting case because the bone that Lucario creates to use Bone Rush is not part of Lucario.
I would say the bone, as long as it's a physical object, if it still comes in contact, it's probably going to start corroding until Lucario actually makes it disappear.
Lucario will either just drop it or make it disappear entirely and then create a new one.
Yeah, so chances are, even if it does start corroding, he can just get rid of it, no problem.
Yeah. But apart from that, like, using other things like, say, close combat or something like that, sure would do heavy damage, but like it'd still do heavy damage to 106, but it would still be a big no-no because Lucario is still using its own fists and feet to actually attack.
Yeah, one single kick or one single punch, and his hand or foot is immediately going to get corroded. Bye-bye to a limb, buddy.
However, the only physical parts of Lucario that wouldn't get affected by the corrosion are the spike on his chest and the spikes on their hands, because those spikes are an indestructible metal that can't be affected by anything.
Still, though, it's sitting on top of flesh, which said flesh can still end up corroding.
Yeah, it would still corrode.
And if the body corrodes, there's nothing left for those to hang on to. And we're already talking about body decay in the first place, considering they're infected with the zombie plague.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All that would be left of that Lucario is just its spikes.
Yep.
Which are not a very big part anyway. And Lucario very rarely ever uses those spikes to begin with, so...
Yeah, and considering 106's abilities, it could just sneak up on whoever it wants to at any point in time. And alongside that, you also got to bring into consideration, if they're going up against 106, 106 also has its pocket dimension.
Then comes in a part that may be a bit more threatening to 106, and that's the fact that Lucario has a Mega Evolution, which makes all of its attacks a whole lot more powerful and can make them do a whole lot more damage. Let's say if that Lucario still is able to Mega Evolve, and it does that, and it's at least wise enough to know not to use attacks where it physically touches him, then 106 may have an issue.
I mean, if we're talking about one that's still alive, of course. In the case of the zombie plague, even a Mega Evolution may still be rotting and decayed. Because, again, if the zombie plague hasn't already deteriorated the brain, then it's in the process of decaying.
Yeah. But yeah, if the Mega Evolution does succeed before that happens, then yeah, it would still be a danger to 106, especially if, like I said, especially if the Lucario is still sort of currently capable of thought. Because it will know that its best chance at surviving, even though it's ultimately not going to survive in the end because of the zombie plague, but if it knows that its best chance of surviving would be to mega evolve and use moves such as Focus Blast and Aura Sphere. It would do that, and then it would continue to use those moves on 106.
Yeah.
So, yeah, ultimately it's still a losing battle for the poor zombified Lucario, but maybe he can at least, well, remember, Lucario can be either female or male, so
Yeah.
maybe it can at least, like, get 106 away from it long enough so that it can escape. But then again, if the Lucario is the type that would rather die quickly, it would probably just let 106 kill it anyway, just to put it out of its misery.
I mean, especially if it's already infected with the zombie plague and it still has some sense of mind.
Yeah, it's probably just gonna. Because see, Lucario is a very wise Pokemon, and it can sense and read people's auras and stuff like that. So with it being as wise as it is, it's still going to know that it would be a bad idea to go out there with living people anyway, because even though it might not seem like it, Lucario is in fact a very kind and caring Pokemon.
Yeah.
And all it wants is for everyone to be happy.
Yeah.
And to be, well, protected. So, nonetheless, it's probably just going to stay there and let 106 kill it anyway.
Yeah, and considering if we're saying that it's infected by the zombie plague, now the zombie plague in SCP is not you look deeper into it, it's not meant to be your everyday average zombie plague. It's got more depth to it. Of course, it's still got the normal zombie stuff, rotting body, lost mind possibly. But
Horrible smell.
yeah, and if it encounters something like 106, a puddle of 106, chances are there's either going to be a fight, or from the pain of already being a 008 instance, just step straight into the puddle.
And then we get down to Cinderace, who very, very rarely ever uses any sort of physical attack where the Pokemon makes physical contact, because of the simple fact that Cinderace more prefers attacks where it fires like a projectile of some type, like Cinderace's like Pyro Ball, for example. But then, and it's not only just 106 that might have an issue here. There's a lot of other SCPs that may have issues dealing with a Cinderace. And that's because mainly this Cinderace has a Gigantamax form.
Oh, yeah.
When it Gigantamaxes, it becomes giant, and it stands atop of a giant Pyro Ball. A Pyro Ball of literal burning fire. I don't think 106 can climb his way up through fire. So in that situation, the only chance he'd really be able to get of attacking Cinderace in that form is coming down through the roof. Yeah. Other than that, he won't be able to reach it.
And simply by how you described it when you first told me about Cinderace in the first place, essentially what I expect is, if that is to be used, that's probably going to end up completely leveling a huge chunk of whatever site they're at.
To be honest, a single G-Max Fireball, because that's Cinderace's G-Max move name, G-Max Fireball, which is used based off of Pyro Ball, that would actually destroy the entire site.
Oh, so the entire site's gone off the map.
Yeah, because
Well,
we are talking about a G-Max here, Gigantamax, which in itself is strong enough to cover over 80% of his site. So one shot from a G-Max fireball is going to destroy the entire site.
yeah, so at this point, essentially, yeah, there's no recovering from this. So what happened
Exactly.
this time? Oh, it was this
It
brand
may
new.
even have the.
Go ahead.
It may even. It sounds pretty weird saying this, but it may even have the potential to legitimately destroy 173. Because G-Max Fireball can tear through pretty much almost anything. And it's not even a god move.
Well, I mean, technically, there could be other SCPs that could even decimate 173. To be honest, say you put 106 up against 173. I would say 106 has a great potential of basically making 173 corrode.
Possibly, yeah.
Unless it decides to randomly start cloning itself. But say it's just
Well,
one
yeah, it would.
instance.
Yeah. And, well, yeah, SCP-173 is not really capable of emotions or anything like that. It is still smart. And I think it would be smart enough to know to clone itself if it's up against if it's up against 106. It would be at least smart enough to know to clone itself.
Yeah. Going back to the mention of Cinderace for a second, that just using that, I could just imagine this after this entire site gets leveled. Sir, what happened this time? Well, our entire site got eviscerated by this new Cinderace instance we have. This is this is worse than what, sir? Well, worse than last week's Chaos Insurgency raid.
Yeah. And the funny and the fucking worst part is for 173 is it wouldn't even see it coming. And the fact that it doesn't even know what Cinderace is to begin with, it's not going to be smart enough to know to clone itself.
But
Because it doesn't know what Cinderace is capable of.
now, considering Cinderace doesn't know what 173 is either, what if it just decides to look at it and then attempt to look away? Would you say that's
Three
probably a
is
done,
that
closed deal? Or,
possibly, but 173, you've got to remember, is the type of creature that can also, depending on the personality, can also cause the being to just stare at it rather than looking away. If it's a being with the personality where they like to stare at things like that and admire it, if that Cinderace happens to be that particular personality, it's not going to look away.
it's almost
The only
it's almost kind of like that one painting. I don't remember what SCP it is, but this painting, if you look at it and you end up getting hooked into it, essentially the painting is forcing you to look at it until it essentially just kills you.
And then, of course, there's also that other painting of that cat, which over time turns people into cats.
Speaking of cats, I know another SCP that's a cat that's extremely friendly.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
the half cat.
yep.
I don't remember its actual name or its number, but
Rosie,
I do
wasn't
remember
it?
it's the half cat. Yeah, I think it's Rosie. And then, of course, we also have Walter, the omnivorous rabbit that can eat everything, like absolutely everything.
Yep.
Like even 682 won't go near it. That's how afraid 682 is of a simple rabbit. A rabbit that eats literally anything.
I mean, to be honest, 682 was still way more scared of 173, though.
Yeah,
When
but
six you
gotta,
know something's scaring 682 when 682 literally starts crying out for God, please help me.
Yep.
Because
But
when
even then,
73 got brought into the room, that was one of the very first things 682 said.
yep. But
Whatever
yeah,
history
even
those
still,
two SCPs had, it really scared the crap out of 682.
well, yeah, because 682 knows that SCP particularly. But you still got to give credit where credit is due. Something has to be pretty scary to make SCP-682 back away in fear, like omnivorous rabbit, known as Walter.
Walter
So
and the
you do have to
statue
still,
scare the crap out of 682.
yep.
And no, people, we're
Even
not
though
talking
Walter
about
is a
Walter from
rabbit,
Jeff Dunham, a different Walter.
yes. Yeah, because I first actually I originally first found out about this particular SCP when I played when I played Minecraft on Java, the SCP Lockdown mod. Walter the Omnivorous Rabbit is in that mod. And then recently I just watched a video about Walter the Omnivorous Rabbit, although they didn't actually refer to him as Walter. So I don't know if Walter is actually supposed to be his canon official name, but I'm assuming it is.
It's probably, if it's not its actual name, it's probably overall a nickname.
Yeah. But I know him as Walter, so that's why I just refer to him as Walter,
Yeah.
the Omnivorous Rabbit. And he does take Omnivore to a whole another level because, like I said, he eats literally anything.
Yep.
Which he could potentially, because he can eat literally anything, he may potentially be one of the few that could be immune to 106's corrosion. Because if he can eat absolutely anything, like it says he can, he would be able to easily eat away the corrosion too.
That still doesn't rule out the fact that the corrosion could still affect it, though.
Maybe. Don't know about that. Possibly. Who knows?
But anyways, we got a little bit off topic with the main topic.
Yeah.
But jumping back
Well,
over,
actually,
I say overall we got the zombie. What is it?
could you pause for a moment? I've got to run to the Thunderbox real quick.
Okay, so let's talk. Go back to
the main topic.
To the three we had in mind before, which was we had Clockwork Virus, Flesh That Hates, and Zombie Plague in mind, with Cinderace, Zeraora, and Lucario. Let's say we jump over to some instances of them that are infected by the Flesh That Hates.
Will we also compare them, certain Pokemon, to like when day breaks as well or something?
Yeah, if you want.
Because if we do that, we know only Pokemon that have actual biological flesh will be affected by it. Because it's not going to affect something like a ghost type Pokemon or a rock type Pokemon.
Oh yeah, these what we're talking about right now obviously excludes ghost types.
Yeah. Because if we were to include ghost types, then, because first of all, ghost types are going to be immune to the Clockwork Virus, because a ghost, even if they are still physical, they're still a ghost type, so they're going to be immune to any sort of that sort of thing. So that's why we're excluding ghost types from this situation.
But yeah, right now we don't have like a ghost type on our plate.
Yeah. The only ghost types that we would include are ones that aren't specifically ghosts themselves, but do have like ghostly abilities.
Yeah. But
such as like, well, I don't think Spiritomb. What Spirit? Oh, actually, no, Spiritomb. No, I don't think.
Well, anyways, what happens if we get a Flesh That Hates version of Lucario, Zeraora, and Cinderace? What do you think happens there? Because essentially, the flesh that hates is another thing that's basically there to spread, like the zombie plague.
Yeah. Um. Well, I still don't know much about the flesh it hates, but it was a lot easier to explain the zombie one because, well, to really explain a zombie one, all you'd have to do is just look at any zombie media,
Yeah.
and then and then add in the ability that they can still use their abilities. It'd be easy to explain that one.
Okay. SCP-610, the flesh that hates. I pulled up the wiki
Yeah.
page, or I'm at least trying to.
All right. Yeah, because like I said, I don't know much about the flesh that hates or the clockwork virus, but
I
if the clockwork virus is ah, if it's as easy to explain as we were talking about earlier, then it should be able to be easy,
yeah.
sort of.
I remember what
It's the
610.
flesh that hates that I might issue with or struggle with.
I remember what 610 looks like, but I don't exactly remember its full description. Now, obviously, I'm not going to read its full description because it goes on for a couple paragraphs, but I think I'll probably read
May
the first three
just
that
highlight the.
the first three. That way, we at least get a decent amount of information.
I was going to say just highlight some of the more important parts, but all right.
All right. I'll see. Jesus. Okay. I mean, you don't know. The other parts of this could be useful too.
Yeah, I know. I was,
Initial reports of SCP-610 came direct from the Russian government through undisclosable channels. These reports consisted primarily of disappearances of farmers in the region and were not considered uh, until the local police, followed by the regional police, and finally the government dispatched agents, all failed to report within a 72-hour period. Da, 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 da. Ah, the area SCP-610 affects is close to Lake Baikal in southern Siberia. Areas of areas of known infection are marked on a map provided to us here. Containment perimeters are marked in blue surrounding these infection areas, and as of present, no further locations have been identified. So there's only specific locations that can really be infection zones. But let's say Lucario, Zeraora, or Cinderace happen to step in these areas. So let's keep going on in this a little bit further. Incursions into the perimeter must be reported prior to conducting, confirmed during exploration, and debriefed on immediately following return. SCP-610 appears to be a contagious skin disease at first, with symptoms including rash, itching, and increased skin sensitivity. Within 3 hours, the disease will cause blemishes resembling heavy scar tissue to form in the chest and arm areas, spreading to the legs and back within an additional hour, consuming the victim completely within 5 hours. Exposure to higher temperatures vastly decreases the time for the contagion to spread, and complete infections have been recorded occurring in as little as 5 minutes.
so basically, high temperatures slow it down.
That's basically what it says, but at the same time, depending on how fast it infects the individual, that infection, that that process could only be slowed down by a very small time, because as it says here, it decreases the time for the contagion to spread. So it spreads much quickly at higher temperatures.
It'd have a bigger and more quicker effect on Cinderace then,
Yep.
because Cinderace is a fire type Pokemon, and it's always hot temperatured, so
And it
it'd
says,
have the biggest impact on Cinderace.
yeah, and it says complete infections have been recorded occurring in as little as 5 minutes during higher temperatures.
What if we were to, just a theory, but what if we were to bring an ice type Pokemon into the situation as well?
Then that would probably greatly slow it down. But still,
Yeah, so
that doesn't exactly mean they would be
it
resistant to it.
yeah,
As long as they have
it'd
skin,
just,
they can be infected.
yeah, it'd just have a much weaker and slower effect on an ice type.
Obviously, of course, until it fully envelops the individual.
Yeah. So we'll exclude Avalugg from that and Regice because they're both ice types that don't have skin. Regice is a legendary Pokemon, but it's not a god one. But we'll still exclude it because it doesn't have skin.
Yeah. Ice types such as Glaceon, though, slow down, but you're still at risk. But what
Yeah.
happens to Zeraora and Lucario in this? They're probably still falling by the standard 5 hour time limit.
Unlikely, yeah.
So they have essentially have 5 hours to live until their bodies are taken over by the flesh that hates. Compared to Cinderace, which would probably be taken over in about 5 minutes, which is a huge decrease in the time that it takes.
And for someone like Glaceon, for example, it'd probably be about 10 hours, maybe.
Yeah.
Because Glaceon is really cold in terms of, temperature. It does have a very, it's ice, and it does have a very, very low temperature. Like, at least, the coldest that I've known a Glaceon to be said is that even its weakest attack has been even if its weakest move is ice type move has been known to be minus 100 degrees Celsius.
Yep. So as cold as that is, it's going to take a while for the flesh that hates to spread. I mean, if it
Yeah,
can't be stopped, of course, which, for what I know, there's no easy way to stop the spread of 610 once an individual is infected.
but
But if there
does that
is
mean
a way
there
to,
is?
well, I mean, for what I know, there isn't, but if there is, or if there actually isn't, then in that case, if there was a way to remove the infection at all, then,
Like Pokemon, the best chance.
like going back to Glaceon, for example, that right there is simple, a simple extraction procedure of 610. Then again,
And
that would also depend on whether the Pokemon would even agree to said extraction, or if they find problems
well,
with it.
let's say, for example, if we had a medic there again, like Ladius, for example, someone who a medic who potentially might have a way to cure it completely, but she would have to go in there herself. But instead of doing that, we'd have an ice type Pokemon, maybe someone like Glaceon, for example, who could go in there and get rid of it, and then before it can completely take her over, Ladius could probably, maybe potentially stop it from taking over the Glaceon.
When I just thought about it, wouldn't it also possibly be able to take over Zeraora quickly too, because is some of what it's based off of, or some of its attacks, like not at high temperatures? Because we're talking about sparks, lightning, electricity. Is it not hot?
Yeah, it is, but Zeraora, like most electric type Pokemon, they that temperature doesn't come into play unless they actually use their electric type attacks.
But doesn't Zeraora have like, like how you say someone powers up in like a video game or something? You know those lines you see going across the body of electricity? Doesn't Zeraora have that, or is that like only specific variations?
It depends on the move you use, because there are some powering up moves that don't do heat.
No, no, no.
Like,
I'm
for example,
saying
if
excluding the abilities. Period. What I'm mentioning is not an attack. It's like the electricity flowing through the body. You're able to see it and stuff. So say that's there, but does Zeraora have that in all varieties, or are we talking about different versions?
sure on that much on that matter, but I can, but like I did just say, I can at least say that the pretty much most of the heat doesn't come into play unless it actually does use an electric type attack.
All right.
That's actually part of why I was actually talking about what I was going to talk about just then, because I was just saying, because there is some setup moves that are moves, but they're not attacks. Like if Zeraora knew Bulk Up, for example, it's a fighting type move that increases. I think it's a power or something. It does that through, well, more of a fighting type sort of style rather than using any sort of temperature. That's
Yeah.
actually why I was going to talk about that.
Let's say the flesh that hates takes over one of the three individuals' bodies. Of course, again, going back to Lucario, Zeraora, and Cinderace. What happens if the flesh that hates takes over the body, but also still has access to said body's abilities?
Well, again, Zeraora being a mythical Pokemon and as strong as it is, and Zeraora again would still be the absolute biggest threat. But Cinderace would still be a bigger threat than Lucario as well if it was to Gigantamax Cinderace.
Yeah. I mean, of course, not saying that they couldn't fight back or anything, but if they were to get fully transformed, per se, how much of a threat do you think they would end up being then? Because would it not be 6'10" in control instead of them?
Yeah, obviously it would be. But then comes the interesting part. Well, yes, granted, it is sped up by heat. Then comes the interesting part to Cinderace's Gigantamax. Specifically, G-Max Fireball is 10 times hotter than the sun.
So would that not end up making 6'10" start to spread like a tsunami?
Possibly, but also being that hot, it's hot enough to incinerate something as well. So could it be possible that a weakness could be turned into a strength? A weakness could be turned into, like, a most powerful weapon? Could it be like it could be hot enough to actually incinerate it before it can spread? That's where the complicated and interesting part of Cinderace comes from.
Now, I've read further into it. SCP-610, The Flesh That Hates, will also, by chance, affect body proportions. It could cause new limbs to grow or distort parts of the body.
Would be terrifying, especially for Zeraora. It'd be terrifying for Zeraora himself, but it'd be also terrifying and make it even more terrifying to face him too.
It would be terrifying from their point of views, from any of them, if they're part of the way through the transformation and limbs start growing.
Oh yeah, definitely. But it would be most terrifying to be put against Zeraora rather than the other two in that situation. Because in that situation, it's using the strength of a mythical Pokemon a lot more than it should be used.
Yeah, now also considering that they are infected, it also says further into it that 610 will also eventually find a place to root itself. So eventually, of course, it starts planting roots in the ground and then spreads across surrounding objects and consumes said objects.
Let's just hope
Such
there's no
objects do
other
not spread the
mythical
infection
Pokemon or
as
anything.
living creatures do, however. And those objects will start to spread it as well. Okay.
And also, let's just hope there's no other mythical Pokemon or any other very strong Pokemon in the area, because if that were the case, well, that would be an XK class end of the world scenario.
Yeah. It seems 610 will also force individuals to seek out help as well. As in, it'll activate that natural response immediately.
Now, I know we are originally excluding God Pokemon from, like, just ones like this, but just a quick mention, a quick question. If that was to infect a God Pokemon, because I don't know if that would be able to or not, maybe it could. What if that was to infect someone like Dialga, for example, who has rule and control over time?
Then 610 eventually gets evolved into a god level SCP, like an XK class end of the world scenario.
Possibly even worse than that.
That's
and God forbid it also take over Palkia too, who has rule and control over space. Then it has control over both the gods of time and space.
Yep.
That would probably be strong enough to end reality itself.
Huh. Oh. Okay, so 610 itself is already a Keter classification.
So there you go. At that point, if it was to take over her Dialga and Palkia, it would become a Polyon.
Okay, yeah.
And then we'd all be fucked.
Okay, so...
in that situation, it would then be appropriate to bring in another god Pokemon to try and stop it, such as like Arceus, for example.
Oh, it wouldn't take Arceus no time to just make it disappear.
Well, yeah, Arceus is the god creator of all things. Arceus can just frickin' use his powers to banish it.
Essentially, Arceus just shows up. Well, you're a mistake, aren't you? It just disappears. 610 never existed.
Yep. Okay, so maybe not go as far as Arceus, but possibly Giratina. Maybe. Because, well, Giratina is part ghost type, after all, so he might have an immunity to it being part ghost type. And Giratina is the third, like, counterpart to Dialga and Palkia, because Giratina is basically the Pokemon world equivalent of the devil. except he is a pure good being. Off topic a little bit, I'll just give him a quick explanation. Giratina, he doesn't pride himself on torturing his slaves or victims or whatever. When a being dies, they first visit Giratina, and if that being is pure, Giratina sends them to be looked after by Arceus. If that new being is just pure, bad, evil, he will keep them and consume them. Or if they were bad, but then decided to try and turn good, Giratina wouldn't consume them, but he also wouldn't send them to Arceus. He would send them to Purgatory, which in the Pokemon universe, I don't know what Purgatory really is, but in our roleplay, Purgatory would be sending them to the Nexomon Wardens to look up. So we're not going to include the Nexomon Wardens.
Yeah.
Because they're not Pokemon.
Now, essentially, I'm starting to think, I don't think 610 could spread this far, but even if gods end up being careless enough to end up, which again, I highly doubt, but if they end up getting infected by 610, 610 is going to start causing some serious chaos.
As I mentioned before, if he got control of even just Dialga or Palkia, even if it just got control of one of them, it'd straight up become a Apollyon class.
Yeah. Now, thinking about that, let's move on to the third one we mentioned. Of course, starting off with Lucario, Zeraora, and Cinderace again. Next, we have SCP-217, the Clockwork Virus. And so far, from what the top of the description says, it says, SCP-217 is a virus, incurable by current means, with a rate of infectivity at 100%. It affects all organisms in the kingdom Animalia, and can be spread via touch or contact with bodily fluid. SCP-217 is very hardy and can survive for years outside the host body. The progress of the infection is very slow, with some subjects going several years before manifesting any symptoms. So 217 can also hide before symptoms start showing.
I don't know how. I mean, yeah, sure, it could still infect a Lucario easily, probably, but I'm not sure, because Lucario is a steel type as well. So I don't know if Lucario being a steel type might have some sort of, maybe a slight difference in the interaction or something.
Well, I mean, I doubt it, because, again, the Clockwork Virus could hide, so there's probably not even a chance of knowing it's there for several years on end. And alongside that, it's, again, 217 basically alters anything that's flesh. So if you're made out of flesh, you somehow get infected by the Clockwork Virus, prepare to be turned into a machine.
Although, does the Clockwork Virus have an aura?
I doubt it. I don't think
if
that's
it
something
has
that's
an aura,
specified in the wiki.
Alright. Because I was just saying, if it does have an aura, then Lucario will detect it instantly. Because Lucario can read and detect auras.
I doubt it does, but if a Lucario can detect a virus, then there you go. But at the same time, it does not carry an aura, for what I know.
So, we don't really know for sure, but maybe it's possible, we don't know. It's not stated in the wiki, so probably not, but it is still a possibility.
Yeah.
I will say Lucario being a very smart and wise Pokemon, if these Pokemon were to be able to detect it, Lucario would detect it the quickest. Because Lucario is a lot more smarter and wiser than Zeraora and Cinderace combined.
Yeah.
Because, see, Lucario is like an owl, or more specifically, Lucario is like Xatu, a psychic-type Pokemon that sees all. Now, yeah, sure, Lucario doesn't see all, but, like, Lucario is wise enough to, like, they're wise enough to be able to detect certain things and to see certain things. So, Lucario would have the highest and quickest chance out of him and Zeraora and Cinderace of being able to actually detect it.
Now, saying this, I'm also going to take this back to the zombie plague and the flesh that hates after this. But say normal variations, like normal instances of Lucario, Cinderace, and Zeraora end up meeting clockwork variations. How do you think they're probably going to handle that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if there is just one Zeraora or if there's multiple. So it's a lot more complicated to explain with Zeraora. But it is very well possible with Cinderace and Lucario. Because if there is only just one Zeraora, then there's not going to be another instance of Zeraora. Because there's only one.
Well,
because
just
that's the thing with
there,
most legendaries and mythical, there's only one of them.
Well, just say there was, for example.
Well, yeah, we'll say there was, for example.
Like, how do you think each one would deal with a clockwork instance of them? And we're talking about fully transformed clockwork. But if you want to, you could also try to throw in, like, infected individuals. Like, not fully transformed, but infected.
So, are we going to exclude, like, for this particular example, are we going to exclude things like Gigantamax and that? Or are we still going to include those?
We could include those, but it's going to be kind of a final resort type of situation.
Yeah, because we know that, as we know, Cinderace is incredibly overpowered when Gigantamax. A Gigantamax Cinderace would easily obliterate a clockwork version of it.
Yeah, basically, those can be brought in, but it's going to be like a...
sort of the thing that we would do if we needed to. It's like a need to know, or not need to know, but like need to do thing.
It's basically a last resort situation.
Yeah.
So, but
like I was just saying.
Yeah, that's only going to be a last resort thing. Say they try to... Excluding the things, of course, that it's going to be automatically death for the clockwork variations. Again, that stuff can still be last resorts, but...
I think we can still include Mega Evolution for Lucario, because that's probably still not going to be instant death.
Now...
Because Mega Evolution Lucario is nowhere near as powerful as Gigantamax Cinderace, or what Zeraora's Z-move was going to be.
Now, thinking about Lucario's Mega Evolution, I think once a Lucario is infected fully by the clockwork virus, I would deem it impossible for it to actually activate a Mega Evolution at that point.
Unless it had already done so before being fully taken over.
Yeah, because essentially it's being turned into a machine.
Yeah. But if it did did do so before being fully taken over, that would be devastating. Because it would be machinifying a mega evolution, which would be very devastating. Not impossible to stop, but would be devastating.
Yeah, and of course, even though 217 is, of course, not sentient, but is a virus, 217 still, of course, isn't going to have any good intentions on actions.
Exactly.
And of course, it's a virus. It's going to attempt to spread. Say we got 3 normal variations, also including Lucario's Mega Evolution, and also the Zero or Z move and Gigantamax for Cinderace. Only as last resorts, Mega Evolution can bypass that for Lucario, but say we got those 3 having to directly fight clockwork variations of themselves. How exactly do you think the fight is going to happen?
Even just like standard Cinderace's Pyro Ball is still pretty hot. So, maybe Cinderace would have the best chance of defeating its Clockwork counterpart.
Yeah, because I would say even though it's a virus that's turning them into machines, they could still have access to their normal abilities, but it obviously counteracts something such as a Mega Evolution. Because I would have to say a Mega Evolution would require flesh, and if all the flesh is just turned into machinery and gears, there's nothing there to evolve.
And the only way that would be able to happen is if it was Cybertronian, which we're not talking about.
Yeah.
The only way for a Mega Evolution to happen in Clockwork is if it took over a Mega Evolved Pokemon, a Pokemon that was already in its Mega Evolution state.
Yeah. So let's start off.
We've actually,
with,
well, it's not really. Just a quick mention here. It's not a SCP related thing, really, but we have seen instances of certain Pokemon becoming sort of robotic versions of themselves. Specifically, the versions of the Pokemon from Pokemon Violet, the future version of the Gen 9 games. Like Iron Valiant, which is a future like robotic version of Gallade, for example.
Yeah, but that, of course, that type of stuff is excluding the Clockwork virus, because obviously the Clockwork virus is going to work way, way different.
I was just bringing it up because it's just for the simple fact is we've seen something like that recently.
Yeah. But let's start off with one that has a powerful ability that's not its last resort. Lucario versus a Clockwork virus Lucario. How do you see that going down?
Well, supposing that the Clockwork Lucario isn't a Mega Evolved one, we know that the other Lucario, if it has its Mega Stone, will Mega Evolve to help itself, to help fend off the Clockwork version of it. Because, see, that's another thing I forgot to mention earlier. A Pokemon capable of Mega Evolution requires its Mega Stone to be able to Mega Evolve. And if Lucario does not have the Lucario Knight, it's not going to be able to do its Mega Evolution. It needs that Mega Stone to Mega Evolve.
Yeah, so let's
Same thing with a Pokemon that can use like all Pokemon are capable of using a Z move as long as they hold a Z crystal.
Yeah, so let's say that Lucario does have access to its Mega Stone.
The non-clockwork version is more than likely going to Mega Evolve to give itself more power if it needs it.
Yeah, but you know, we're talking about the Clockwork virus. The Clockwork
Yeah,
virus infected Lucario may still have a trick or two up its sleeve. Even if
yeah,
Mega evolved, it could still secretly transfer the virus to the Lucario that's fighting it.
yeah. And then we'd have two different viruses in one body fighting each other off. Now, if the Lucario that became infected by the Clockwork virus does have a Mega Stone but wasn't Mega Evolved, it won't be able to Mega Evolve, but it will still be able to draw her power from the Mega Stone. So it will still be able to get stronger from it at least.
So do you think the Lucario would have a good chance up against uh, a Clockwork Lucario, or what do you think would end up happening?
Def- Definitely, it'd still have a good chance. But if the Clockwork Lucario draws her power from the Mega Stone, it will be a lot tougher of a battle.
Well, again, it's not
Because it'll.
what it was originally. It's all just machinery now. So chances are that's
Yeah,
impossible.
yeah, maybe.
But
But it would definitely still be a tough battle, though, nonetheless.
yeah. And of course, again, like I mentioned, the Clockwork variants still have the ability to transfer the virus secretly to whoever they're fighting.
Yeah.
I don't remember if the Clockwork virus is airborne or not. I want to say that's more physical contact, but excluding it going through the air, I would say the Lucario would probably be fine as long as it doesn't physically come into contact with its Clockwork variant. But still, again, the Clockwork virus has
It's,
already infected a host, so
yeah.
anything could still happen.
Well, it could be a similar. It could be, in this particular situation, it could be similar to how a Mega Lucario would face 106. In that, if the Lucario was to use Bone Rush and then it started to infect the bone, Lucario can terminate the infection in the bone by making the bone disappear.
Yeah, because it would just start corroding the bone. Again, if
Yeah,
the Lucario, even if it is Mega Evolved, tried attacking uh, 106 with a punch or a kick, it's either going to lose a hand or a foot.
I will say the infection in a Mega Evolved Pokemon in general would still work, but it would be slowed down because Mega Evolution adding in more power would put more force behind it and at the very least slow the infection down a bit.
Yeah, but still, it's going to start corroding. And of course, once said body part has corroded, there's not really any way to just get that back.
Unless you're one of the rare few Pokemon that can regenerate yourself. Because there are some Pokemon that can do that.
Yeah, but I think the three we currently got on our plate are not capable of that without assistance.
Yeah,
And I say
yeah,
assistance
they're not capable.
because there could be Pokemon that could help them with that. And obviously, there's also SCPs that have those anomalous abilities.
as we've seen with 682 and 096, for example.
Yeah. And considering one's SCP-106, the old man, is made out of a corrosive, liquid-like material, chances are, if it gets obliterated, it's just going to be able to reform itself.
Yeah,
So,
because that's what happened. That's what happened during the battle between 682 and 106. He kept killing 106, but he kept coming back.
yeah. Yeah, so unless you erase him from existence, 106 is going to be a problem no matter what. If you got flesh and you either decide to physically attack it or step foot in the wrong area, you're bound to end up losing something because you ended up touching the corrosion.
Isn't the only material that can stop 106 like some sort of magnetized material or something like that? Some sort of magnetism material? Because there isn't there that one material that they use to contain him in that he's not able to corrode?
Uh,
Isn't that like a magnetized material?
I don't exactly remember, but for what I do know, 106 is able to pass through most materials.
Would he? Would he be? I mean, yeah, we're getting a little bit off topic now, but just a quick question: would he be able to do that to tungsten? Because tungsten is an indestructible metal.
Well, it doesn't really matter if it's indestructible because 106 is not exactly corroding the wall, it's passing through the wall. Because usually, from what the games and stuff show, or even by the wiki files, if I remember correctly, if the walls and stuff, like the materials, had started to corrode, the site that 106 is contained in would have already been falling apart.
So since he's just passing through them, he'd probably still be able to go through tungsten. But if he was corroding it, he may not be able to corrode tungsten because it's indestructible.
Yeah, but of course, the entire body is not made out of that material. I mean, considering that fact,
So,
106 still has that opportunity to corrode the flesh.
anyway, since we have gone off topic, we should get back on topic.
Yeah,
You didn't mean to take us off topic, sorry about that.
that's fine. So,
It's something that we talked about in the topic just brought up the question.
yeah. Okay, so Lucario.
So, yeah.
God.
Sorry, bro, I was just about to say, so yeah, back on topic.
Okay, yeah, you said that 3 times now. Anyways,
Sorry.
Lucario and versus its Clockwork version. I say that one's pretty much done because I say
Yeah.
Lucario still has a good chance of taking out the Clockwork version, considering it has a leverage of the Mega Evolution over it, but the Clockwork variation could still be sneaky enough to hit the Lucario with the infection. Moving on to Zeraora versus a a Clockwork Zeraora.
Going to be a lot more difficult of well, actually, that could be. It depends what context we go in, I think. It could be a lot more difficult to explain or a lot more easier to explain. It's the fact that Zeraora, again, is a mythical Pokemon and really strong, so I think this one more probably, if it's easy or difficult to explain, I think this one's more in that situation based on the context that we decide to run with for it.
Hmm.
It'd definitely be a pretty dangerous fight to begin with.
Yeah. Again, I'd say the
Especially,
Zeraora would still be in a dangerous position, because the
yeah,
Clockwork Zeraora, just like the others, has the capability of secretly passing on the Clockwork virus.
and if and if both versions are capable of using Zeraora's power, that's what's going to make it so dangerous.
Yep.
Because you got two Zeraoras going against each other, and one made a bit stronger by a virus, and the other one made stronger by its willpower to try and survive the virus, even though it knows it probably won't be able to.
I mean, essentially, it's going to be a fight to win, and then just a fight to
Yeah.
survive. That is, if
Yep.
it happens to get infected.
Mm-hmm. We know for sure that. Now, we know for sure if we're talking about the zombified one going against the Clockwork one, we know for sure that if we have Ladius on standby, the one infected by the zombie virus would be fine because Ladius can cure zombie viruses. So she would be able to cure the zombie one afterward. The flesh that hates, maybe not, don't know. Can't be sure on that one.
Now, let's say for the Zeraora, the Clockwork virus also has access to the Cut Z move.
Yeah, that would be absolutely devastating.
Because, I mean,
Especially since it was supposed to be a one-shot move.
yeah, and if the Clockwork virus doesn't already disable the abilities, then that's still going to be there. And
Yeah.
if the Clockwork virus decides to use the Z move against the living Zeraora, instead of like pass on the infection, then that's going to kill the Zeraora anyways.
Yeah. Because it was an electric type Z move, the only Pokemon that it would have no effect on is ground type Pokemon, since they're immune to electric type attacks. Plus, if we were to include a ground type in the mix, the ground type Pokemon would probably more than likely come out of it unscathed, especially if they're going to just be attacking each other with electric type moves.
Yeah.
Because electric type Pokemon are also weak to ground type moves.
Okay. So say overall we probably have Zeraora there. Moving on to Cinderace. Cinderace versus a Clockwork Cinderace. And again,
Now,
this is considering that it doesn't get rid of its abilities, so the Clockwork virus also has access to the Gigantamax.
Now, here's where the non-Clockwork Cinderace has the advantage. Because of the fact that Cinderace is a fire-type Pokemon, it resists its own type. It resists fire. Because of the logic, adding fire to fire just adds more fire.
Yep.
Because, see, that's the thing. Most of Pokemon type matchups in Pokemon logic is actually based on real-life logic. So, adding fire to fire just creates more fire. It adds more fire, which is why fire types resist their own attacks. They resist their own type. And with the Clockwork version of Cinderace then becoming made out of metal, it will follow the logic of being a steel type, because it works the same. You use heat to melt steel. You use heat to melt anything. So this is
Essentially,
where the non-clockwork Cinderace would have the upper hand, the upper paw, the advantage.
essentially the clockwork virus would only have the actual chance of taking out the Cinderace by slipping the virus to the normal Cinderace.
And plus, although another tricky part is added in if you add Pokemon abilities. Cinderace's hidden ability is Libero, which when a Cinderace with Libero uses a move, its type changes to the same type of the move that it just used. It's the same as Greninja's Protean. So, like, for example, if you teach... what's that poison type move my Cinderace knows? I guess it doesn't matter. But my Cinderace knows a poison type move and has the ability Libero. So, for example, if the non-clockwork version of Cinderace has the Libero ability, if it knows a ground type move, it could use that, and Libero will change it to a ground type. Which steel is also weak to ground as well. And if it would be putting itself at risk by doing that, because I think fire, if memory serves, is neutral on ground. So, and Cinderace is a very smart Pokemon as well. So I reckon it'd be smart enough to know not to use anything like any sort of an attack that would make fire more effective on it.
Yeah.
So I think Cinderace, I think in this situation maybe Libero doesn't matter, because the Cinderace knows it's up against basically a metal version of itself, so it's obviously going to stick to its fire type moves. Especially Pyro Ball, giving that Pyro Ball is its strongest move if it's not Gigantamax.
Yeah. And again, essentially putting all this information together, the only way I could see that the virus could technically come out winning is if it happens to manage to secretly slip the virus to the living Cinderace.
Yeah. And another thing that could complicate things is the fact that Pokemon get a stab boost bonus. So if a Pokemon uses an attack, like a move that is the same type as the Pokemon itself, it gets a stab boost bonus out of that. So, for example, say you get two Pokemon with 100% identical stats. So, say you get two fire types, both with 100 attack. Well, actually, one of them doesn't have to be a fire type. Say you get... Okay, so Zoroark, for example, is a dark type, if we're talking about the original Unovian Zoroark. It's a dark type, but it can learn Flamethrower. If you get a fire type that has the identical special attack to the Zoroark, so their special attack is exactly the same, the Flamethrower coming from the fire type is still going to be stronger. It's still going to do more damage, because the fire type Pokemon is using a fire type attack, so it's got the stab boost on top of that. So it's going to still do more damage coming from the fire type than what it is coming from Zoroark, because Zoroark is not a fire type.
The fire is strengthening the fire.
Yep. And so that's the situation we face going between these two versions of Cinderace. Because if, when the Clockwork Cinderace is transformed, it would more be considered Steel type and no longer Fire type. So so it would not get the stab boost from using fire-type attacks. Plus, on top of that, it's using them on a Cinderace that is still fire-type, so the fire-type Cinderace is not going to take much damage from it at all, because fire resists itself.
Yeah. Now,
so this is where the best chance the Clockwork one would have is by passing the virus on.
Yeah. Now, I was just thinking about it. Going back to the mention of the fact that Slenderman's an SCP. Say we have a Pokemon. Well, since we were already talking about Lucario, Cinderace, and Zeraora, say one of them comes into contact with Slenderman. What happens then? Because, of course, everyone knows Slenderman as a creepypasta. It's also technically an SCP as well.
That's a bit more difficult because I didn't think we were going to include freaking Slenderman because it's originally a creepypasta. I didn't think we were going to include that. So
well,
that's going to be a lot more tricky.
It's technically an actual SCP too, because it made it into the SCP realm.
Yeah, I know, but like when you mentioned it, it's the first time I've heard of Slenderman actually being an SCP now.
I think it's 5. Actually, I don't remember the number of it. But I ain't going to try to search it. I ain't interested in seeing a picture of Slenderman at like 2 a.m. I've already got bad enough paranoia. I don't need to see that.
Yeah, especially not at 3 a.m. Like when it gets to 3 a.m., especially not then.
Oh yeah, screw that. I ain't looking at no Slenderman picture at 3 a.m.
I suppose we better not stray off topic. I was going to mention something, but then I don't want to stray off topic, so we'll get back onto this topic.
But yeah, everyone knows how Slenderman works and everything. Of course, it's obvious. One of the most famous creepypastas out there is. And also urban legend before it even was a creepypasta, because I'm pretty sure it was an urban legend before it was a creepypasta.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Well, we do know that Slenderman gets angrier and angrier every time you freaking find a page.
Well, good thing is there's no Slenderman pages around here.
Exactly. But would that... maybe not, because fighting something like a Pokemon might end up still getting him angry anyway. Unless most of his anger is channeled through finding the pages, in which case, if that's the case, then he wouldn't be as strong.
I mean, that's what gets him active in the first place. I mean, it's not like you just start spouting his name and he's like, "Who dares speak of me?" No. You gotta disturb the pages for him to start looking after you.
Yeah. I mean, this is not that fucking bot site that we're talking about where the moment I entered into Slenderman's chamber, he wanted to kill me.
Yeah, it's not like that.
But at least one thing we do know, he's also not friendly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, it's not like he's going to be offering you milk and cookies as long as you don't disturb the pages. It's not like you're going to be knocking on his door and he's going to be like saying, "Oh yes, come in, have some milk and cookies." Yeah, it's not like he's going to be doing that.
Imagine Slenderman pulling up in a white van that says "free candy."
Or an ice cream truck. Here you go, kids, have some ice cream. Long as you don't disturb my pages, I won't be harmful to you.
Oh, you mean this page, sir? Why, you little static starts growing?
Yep. Oh, Jesus. But okay, no, we're getting off topic again.
But yeah, anyways, say a Pokemon happens to encounter a Slenderman.
Obviously, since Pokemon don't know about Slenderman, if there are pages there, they're probably going to have a look at them and disturb them.
And again, since we were mentioning Lucario, Zeraora, and Cinderace before, let's have those three encounter Slenderman.
One thing I will say is that Slenderman definitely would have an aura. So Lucario is going to easily be able to detect that Slenderman is there.
But the question is, what would the Lucario's reaction be? Fight Slenderman or take off running? My best, if I was a Lucario, my first idea would be get the HE double hockey sticks out of there.
Being like Lucario being a friendly Pokemon is not. They're probably going to approach the Slenderman, but they're probably not going to immediately go and try and fight, because Lucario is initially a friendly Pokemon
And
that cares for people.
If I saw a creature that was as pale as the moon, had no facial features whatsoever, and had tentacles coming out of his dang back, that would not be something I would be approaching just like, oh hey, how's it going, buddy? No.
I will say Lucario may still approach, but Lucario would still be wary, knowing, like, being able to see those tentacles and that. The Lucario is at least going to be smart enough to know that it could be dangerous, so it's still going to be wary of it.
Yep.
But trying to be friendly at the same time, unless something provokes Lucario. If Slenderman, like, as long as Lucario left the pages alone, if Slenderman wasn't going to hurt Lucario and wasn't going to try and threaten Lucario, Lucario would probably try to communicate.
Slenderman's still going to be. Well, actually, if I remember correctly, Slenderman is supposed to be technically capable of telepathy. But
telepathy.
Either way, it's 2:23 a.m. Cut me some slack.
Potato.
Anyways, Slenderman is supposed to be capable of telepathy, but at the same time, of course, even if you get close to Slenderman, Slenderman's not happy with you in the first place.
Yeah. Now, since Lucario can also detect auras, or emotions, because the Lucario is, the sort of like how Lucario works is based on a dog. Dogs can detect your aura, they can sense you, they can read your aura, they detect your emotions.
Yeah, because Lucario is a canine.
Yeah, he's actually a jackal, to be specific.
Yeah, technically still falls in the canines.
Yeah, well, yeah, because jackals are canines, just like foxes.
Yeah.
But a little bit of, because Lucario is also based on, even though Lucario itself is not a god and is not god power, Lucario is also partially based on the Egyptian god Anubis.
Yeah.
So that's probably where the wise factor, the smart factor, comes from. The fact that Anubis is an Egyptian god, so that's probably where the wise and smart factor for Lucario comes from.
Yeah, but I mean,
probably the bravery too.
If Lucario is wise and smart, then I don't really think a Lucario would be trying to approach something such as Slenderman.
At the same time, Lucario is brave, so maybe its bravery might have it going up there.
I mean, possibly, but at the same time, I say that Slenderman is much more of a huger threat than what a Lucario may think at first.
Yeah, it's unlikely that the Lucario would like just immediately go up to him. Like I said, the Lucario is still going to be weary, so it's not going to just instantly go up there to him.
I mean, obviously there's going to be hesitation, but not any backing down unless clear danger is seen.
Rare, even when clear danger is seen, it's still very rare that a Lucario backs down to begin with. See, Lucario is that type of Pokemon that doesn't back down from a fight.
I think Slenderman will give more than a fight. It'll be a capture and then a torture session until the individual's dead.
Yeah, that is one of the likely outcomes.
If I remember correctly, this version of Slenderman in SCP is called A Bundle of Stories.
We'll say, well, yes, it's true a Pokemon should not underestimate Slenderman. The same works vice versa as well. Slenderman should not underestimate a Pokemon either.
Oh, Slenderman is extremely smart. I mean, even though there's no clear signs to tell that, oh, well, it's just some kind of creature or something, Slenderman has a lot more intelligence than what you would take it for by just looking at it.
Obviously. So Slenderman, like, even though he is really smart and intelligent, though, he doesn't really know Pokemon, so he may not know exactly how to handle the situation, is what I'm saying. Because at the same time, he also doesn't know what the Lucario is capable of. So he may not fully understand how to deal with the situation.
I mean, yeah, that's obvious, but at the same time, even for a powerful Pokemon, I doubt that a fight with Slenderman is one you want to easily pick.
Exactly, yeah. There is still a possible chance that a Lucario could beat Slenderman, or at the very least escape.
I mean, with the right choices, an escape might be possible, but
most Lucarios are probably just going to stay and fight. They're probably just going to stay there and that because of it, just purely how brave they are.
Your honest opinion, do you say that would probably be at least a decent attempt or a straight up death wish?
There would be a decent attempt, and I will say Lucario, especially one that can Mega Evolve, will be a decent battle for Slenderman.
Yeah.
Because Slenderman is, even a non-Mega Evolved Lucario, Slenderman is still going to have a bit of a challenge on his hands. But putting the Mega Evolution in that, Slenderman will have a pretty tough time dealing with a Mega Lucario. Especially if you make it angry. That's where Lucario's most powerful inner strength comes from. That's if you upset a Lucario, like even other entities, like people have put other entities against an angered Lucario before, and that angered Lucario wasn't even Mega Evolved, and yeah, it didn't end well for these entities that they put him against.
I mean, again, still, even then, Slenderman wouldn't be too much of a pushover. Slenderman has a temper behind him, too.
Slenderman is powerful.
Yeah,
Slenderman is powerful. I'll give him that. He is powerful. He could still at least have some sort of a chance, though. Like, he could still do something.
if I remember correctly, Slenderman is also supposed to be an eldritch abomination. I can't be sure about that, but that's apparently what I know. So if we're talking eldritch, we're talking about some powerful entity. And of course, almost everyone knows Slenderman. And if you know Slenderman, you know he's no joke whatsoever.
Exactly. See, it's pretty tricky to. It's pretty very tricky to put together exactly how it would go down. I think ultimately, in the end, both sides have a 50-50% chance. It's 50-50.
Yeah.
With Zera Aura, on the other hand, sorry, but the chances of Slenderman beating a mythical Pokemon, it's 80% in Zera Aura's favor.
I mean, you never know. I mean, Slenderman may be capable of more than what people have documented. Again, we're talking an Eldritch level entity.
Yeah.
So Slenderman probably has a lot of things up his sleeve.
Yeah, definitely. He definitely does.
Jumping off of Slenderman for a second, I also want to kind of pull up another creepypasta that's apparently also an SCP. And I'm sure you're familiar with Sonic.exe.
I might also go ahead and add something in as well. The Wendigo.
Is the Wendigo an SCP?
Well, I don't know, but maybe. I don't really know. I think so. Maybe not. Not sure. But it is a very powerful creature nonetheless. A very dangerous and powerful creature with a very strong thirst and taste for blood and flesh. It's a deadly, murderous creature.
Well, that's definitely no joke.
It's also known to, well, not technically to be indestructible, but it is known to be pretty strong. And in some situations, it could be possibly able to regenerate.
Yeah.
So we know the Wendigo could probably also be a good match for Slenderman or any other of these other entities, perhaps.
Now, how would you say Sonic.exe would probably fare?
Against the Wendigo?
No, I mean like against the Pokemon we mentioned.
Well, if Sonic EXE can, I'm not even going to say the dot part. For me, there's just no point. If Sonic EXE can use speed, he'll easily be able to maybe not kill Zera Aura, but at least do significant damage.
Well, it also kind of depends on what version of Sonic.exe you're talking about. Lord X is supposed to be the most powerful version. And considering Lord X can manipulate entire worlds, just simply Lord X coming into existence is... It's just straight up the world asking to be distorted.
Except, though, the problem is that Lord X is a more of a god-level creature, being able to manipulate worlds and stuff, so...
Yeah, but we'll just stick with the original Sonic.exe, because Lord X, I think, is... I don't think technically Lord X is an SCP.
And plus, even if it was, if we were going to bring that into the equation, it would then be appropriate to bring in god-level legendary Pokemon.
Yeah. But
such as Dialga and Palkia.
We've gotten a good way into this. Why not bring in... start bringing in some of the higher-up stuff? Because, I mean, now that I think about it, we've been on Lucario, Cinderace, and Zera Aura for a while now.
Start bringing in some more, well, maybe not god level just yet, but
Well, I mean, we've already had over 2 hours so far. So I say let's go ahead and start bringing some of that in. Now, I want to go ahead and start with some of the more obvious ones in the SCP universe. But I'm only going to bring 2 of them out for now. The Scarlet King and the Gate Guardian.
already know the Gate Guardian is a good entity. It's a peaceful entity. So
I mean, of course,
it's
unless you
not
decide to start
disobey.
going around the area.
Yeah. Now, I will say, though, it wouldn't really be able to do that much to. It wouldn't really be able to do that much to Pokemon like Dialga and Palkia. Because, first of all, we know Dialga has complete and total rule and control over time. I mean, Dialga did create time, after all, and Palkia created space. An attack from the sword would be considered fire type, so it'd be neutral damage on Dialga, but Dialga does have extremely high defense and special defense, and his body is hard as steel. Along with that, he can easily use his abilities to control time to slow the Gate Guardian down so much that the Gate Guardian would be gone as slow as a snail to him.
Okay.
And then all he had to do after that was just roar of time the Gate Guardian out of existence.
Though there is thought to be more than one Gate Guardian, as the Gate Guardian has been speculated to only move away from the gate when the Rapture is cued.
Yeah, when there's a need for it.
Yeah. So there would be multiple Gate Guardians to deal with, but even many of them probably wouldn't be much to deal with.
And the reason why the Gate Guardian's fire sword would just be neutral damage on Dialga is because Dialga is Dragon Steel. Steel is weak to fire, but Dragon resists fire. So the sword wouldn't be weak or strong to Dialga. In that situation, it would come down to Dialga's defensive stats, which we know they are extremely high. So, with how high Dialga's defensive stats are, I don't think the sword would even be able to do much to Dialga anyway to begin with.
Okay, so the Gate Guardian is basically already out of the question. What if the Scarlet King was to start causing trouble?
Well, this is where it gets really annoying and frustrating, but also at the same time interesting to explain legendary Pokemon, especially ones like Dialga, giving that the time manipulation. It's, again, something as simple and easy as slowing down the time, which will slow down the Scarlet King, and then all the Dialga then has to do is just keep blasting Roar of Time at it until the Scarlet King is finally eradicated.
Now, there's also something else I want to touch up on, because there's of course, you know those SCPs that have the ability to basically erase stuff from existence, or wish stuff out of existence, for that matter.
Comes to that, we just bring Arceus into the equation.
Well, what if they happen to wish Arceus out of existence? What would the result be? What would we look at?
Arceus is that kind of Pokemon that is immune to that kind of effect.
Okay, so what do you think the backlash from attempting that would be?
Arceus just being all like pathetic and then erasing it from existence instead.
Now, would Arceus ever attempt to actually eradicate the entire SCP universe?
No, as long as it didn't pose any threat to to what he cares about. Such as like Pokemon in the Pokemon world, for example. Basically anything that he created that he loves and that he cares about, as long as it meant no danger to them, to any of that, he wouldn't bother. He wouldn't. Yeah, like he'd just be like, yeah, whatever, just go about your business.
Okay. So,
Like he's not a hostile entity. Like if he was to appear before you, he's not immediately going to go be like, you're dead.
yeah.
He's not like 682.
Yeah. Now, I also want to think back on lower situations for a second as well. Because I've been thinking about it for a little bit. Let's go back down to something like SCP-035. What would happen if if the possessive mask was put on a Pokemon, depending on the type of Pokemon?
We know if okay, so there's three types. There's three Pokemon types that we know would be immune to that. Those are Dark, Ghost, and Psychic, and well, maybe Fairy. I don't know, but Dark, Ghost, and Psychic are definitely going to be immune to something like that, especially Ghost.
Ah.
I don't know about Fairy type. Maybe I don't really know.
Well, if it's
Fairy type
if it's
Pokemon
physical,
are magical. So
if it's physical, the possessive mask will probably attach to it. It may not be able to affect it, but once it's latched on, it's probably going to stay there.
Yeah, it still could do that. But it also can it like what about facial like can it latch onto every kind of face? Can it like morph to like fit the face?
From what I know, it should be able to just latch onto just about anything. And even though it sounds kind of depressing thinking about this, it could even possibly latch on to SCP-999 if it wanted to.
Be an interesting thing to think about too, how that would play out.
Great, now we got an evil SCP-999. Well, this world's screwed.
Unless, of course, SCP-999 just makes the mask happy and causes the mask to just release itself off of it. Because we don't want to leave out 999's abilities either.
Yeah. But at the same time, 035 does leak and ooze from the mask.
And that's where it becomes very, very complicated, very difficult to explain, because both sides have very strong opposing abilities that yeah, I don't know. I think that just gives birth to a paradox, honestly.
Essentially, the two would just be constantly fighting for power.
Yep. An endless battle. And so, there you go. We've just created a paradox.
Since Amy wanted us to kind of use the three we had in mind a bit, what would happen if the possessive mask was attached to Lucario, Cinderace, or Zeraora?
Really sure, honestly. I know for sure it would easily take over Zeraora or Cinderace. I don't know about Lucario though. I don't know. That one's a tricky one to explain or to even think about. It's not a paradox, but it's also not very easy to explain or to even talk about.
My best bet is it would probably be a fight for the mind at that point.
Yeah, and after all, Lucario being as strong-willed and smart and wise as it is, it would probably be able to fend off the mask's power quite well.
035 tends to be more manipulative than it is, like, murderous. But at the same time,
Yeah.
035 has also shown the ability to take over mannequins.
Then you've got Lucario with an extremely strong mind, and that is almost impossible to manipulate.
Yeah.
That's actually literally been shown that Lucario's mind is impossible to manipulate. Simply because of how smart Lucario is, how wise it is, it's impossible to manipulate its mind.
And I mean, if 035 doesn't take over and instead ends up occupying the same body, how do you think that would play out?
I think if it can at least still see what's going through Lucario's mind, it would actually literally want to wish itself out of existence. You do not want to know what goes through the mind of a Lucario. I think if that happened, the mask would actually rather detach itself and wish itself out of existence. It wouldn't want to exist knowing what's going through a Lucario's mind.
Well, I mean, 035 is pretty much insane itself. It's still smart enough to, of course, manipulate people, but its actual mindset is kind of disjointed. Otherwise, it wouldn't be evil in the first place. And alongside that, let's move on to something simpler. Of course, this may seem like it's easier to take on, but at the same time, it's also kind of complicated. Say, Pokemon and SCP end up working with each other, or most of them overall. What would end up happening if a huge breach of the site ends up being caused by the Chaos Insurgency? From what records show, Chaos Insurgency usually breaks in, has some superior stuff compared to the Foundation, and usually tries to raid the places. Chaos Insurgency is basically known as the Foundation's archenemy.
If there's any Pokemon that I know of that SCP-682 would definitely work with, that's Yveltal. Because Yveltal is basically, in personality-wise, it's basically, he's the Pokemon world's own 682.
Yeah.
Yveltal also being filled with hate, and he is the power of destruction after all. Yveltal is the legendary Pokemon of destruction and hatred.
Yeah, that would probably destroy the site already to begin with, but excluding stuff that powerful, let's just talk about more simpler and, of course, actually friendly, other than friendly towards the SCPs who want to destroy the universe.
I'll have to be right back real quick because I got to run to the Thunderbox again. Sorry for the inconvenience again.
Alright. Now, going back to it for a minute, of course, saying, like, the Chaos Insurgency is trying to raid the site, and of course are also trying to raid instances of Pokemon as well, because now the place is also occupied by Pokemon. Chaos Insurgency breaks in and tries to basically steal some stuff, raid the place. How do you think it would play out? That's also considering some of the big three that we've been talking about anyways. Like the main examples Amy wanted us to use.
Well, what is a SCP that is good and caring and protective, but also strong and smart like Lucario. If we got an SCP like that, that and Lucario would team up and try and take out the Chaos Insurgency.
I can't really immediately say off the top of my head.
I only have one smoke left.
Let's see.
Nowhere. Mother come this morning and got me some McDonald's.
Oh.
Sorry about this. My auntie is here at the moment.
Okay.
I'm still here. Back.
Well, I don't know where. I think they've gone back up to what's that woman's name's place.
Three.
Yeah.
Give you any smokes, or is it only the smoke toilet?
No, they didn't give me any smokes because I showed them how many I had. So Mother asked if she could have one, so I let her have one. And then I asked her, I said, "Hey, Mother, can you bring me back some McDonald's before you go, wherever you're going?"
Jesus
So,
Christ. Here's the information for the Chaos Insurgency.
You know, I'd say if we got an SCP like that and teamed up with Lucario, frickin' Cinderace would probably team up with it too.
Probably. Let's see. When writing an object document for the Chaos Insurgency, you have to keep in mind that, unlike the Foundation, the Insurgency actively uses anomalous items. So they use anomalous items. Whatever items they have in hand that are anomalous, they aren't afraid to use it. Due to the breakdown between cells and the differences in personnel class amongst the cells, Delta Command releases purely need-to-know documents. And all the Insurgency really needs to know is what to do with the anomalies, not what they are or their exact method of function. Essentially, a member of Delta Command, codenamed the Engineer, constantly transcripts. Okay, I'm trying to see what equipment they have and stuff. Let's see. They're an organization that purports integration of the anomalous, to have as its goal the perfect understanding and integration of the anomalous, but they don't tell their operatives anything about these paranormal objects or phenomena. Trying to look at their dang equipment and stuff. Let's see.
Because basically the Chaos Insurgency is basically the Team Rocket of the SCP universe.
They were actually originally known as the Insurgency, meant to be part of the Foundation, but they broke off and became the Chaos Insurgency.
Yep. Wasn't that because of like disagreements and stuff like that?
Pretty sure.
And that's one of the differences between the Chaos Insurgency and Team Rocket. With Team Rocket, they were always bent on world domination.
Let's see.
You know, that'd be an interesting thing to think about too. What if the Chaos Insurgency met Team Rocket, and but it's like a Team Rocket from another universe where Team Rocket won and got control of all the legendary Pokemon from that universe. That'd be an interesting battle. Like, say, because we know that Team Rocket are the ones that created Mewtwo.
Yeah.
That could be another topic for another time. Chaos Insurgency versus a universe Team Rocket that actually won.
Get this, there's a briefing document that's literally called Chaos Insurgency is a stupid name.
Lol. Funny thing, there's also a freaking document in the Pokemon universe saying Team Rocket is a stupid name.
Coincidence?
The Chaos Insurgency is literally the Team Rocket of the freaking SCP universe at that point.
Tuh.
The only big differences being is that fucking Team Rocket have always been bent on world domination, and the Chaos Insurgency doesn't go around to random people stealing their SCPs. Other than that, there's no other major differences.
Okay, it doesn't say much about their weaponry, but from how I've actually seen it described, they're supposed to have, like, superior weaponry to the Foundation. That's why they're actually able to raid the place a lot. But we're talking about multiple different sites as well.
But isn't the fact that the Chaos Insurgency still loses because the SCP Foundation knows how to use SCPs to their advantage?
Not really. The SCP Foundation doesn't just let out the SCPs to start attacking the Chaos Insurgency. Because that's obviously very dangerous if one of them happens to get out into the public. A.
Yes, especially 2 or 096.
B.
Or even 106.
The SCPs, depending on how they are, could turn on the Foundation at any point. C.
Yeah.
That's dangerous to be doing in the first place, and also a huge break of rules. I don't think even Jack Bright would be that dumb. Speaking of which, I think Dr. Bright would be a good person to bring up right now, too.
Because he's also an SCP now, technically.
Yeah, he is an SCP, but he hates it when people call him by the SCP number. He hates it.
He's an SCP mostly because of that freaking cartouche he's got.
The medallion.
Yeah. Medallion.
Stop trying to brand it with your own stuff, dummy. It's a medallion. But anyways, it basically keeps him immortal. If he happens to die or loses his current body, the medallion can just be thrown on anyone and hey ho, there you go, he's got a new body. He did end up attempting to do that with SCP-682, but if I remember correctly, I think it basically, I don't know if it did it to both of them, but I think it actually almost put both of them into a coma, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a very disastrous thing to do.
I think it put 682 in a coma for a while, and it actually destroyed Jack Bright's previous body. So he had to get a new body.
Yep.
I just thought of something. How chaotic would it be if you put Jack Bright's medallion on an SCP-008 instance? Jack Bright just starts screwing around with a frickin' zombie body.
Yep. Or even, God forbid, he tried to do it with a Pokemon.
Oh god, imagine the different Pokemon as Jack Bright.
Oh look, Jack Bright lets himself get killed by the legendary Pokemon Zacian and... Oh shit, oh fuck, oh
I
shit.
feel like it would be one of those more complicated situations if it came down to something such as a Lucario. But at the same time, I could imagine how hilarious that would be if Jack Bright and the Lucario were both occupying the same body. The Lucario is probably just like, why do I have to keep dealing with this guy? Because I feel like Jack Bright is definitely one of those, one of the doctors at the Foundation that you do not want to share bodies with.
Then again, if they also share mind, Jack Bright's also not going to want to be in the fucking body of a Lucario anyway. Because as I was saying before, you do not want to know what goes through a Lucario's mind. He would be wishing to get the hell out of there.
Man, both of them probably would. Lucario would be like, can I have my body back? Can I have my body back? Can I have my body back? Jack Bright would just be like, put my medallion on someone else.
Yep.
Both of them would be begging to get away from each other. That would be awful.
It'd be awful, but also hilarious.
All the other doctors, and possibly some Pokemon that are probably just straight up bullies, would be like, nah, you both will be fine for the next couple hours. If if a Lucario and Dr. Jack Bright had to share the same body for the rest of their lives, who do you think would probably be the first one to just give up on the body? Just be like, well, screw this.
Well, Jack Bright definitely would, because fucking Lucario takes pride in their bodies and they never give up on their bodies.
And technically, Jack Bright can't really give up on a body anyways. He's still technically there, but he has to go from body to body depending on the status of the body. And technically, putting the medallion on someone kicks them out of their body in the first place. But again, Lucario might be a situation where the minds will end up just being shared, which of course would end up in both the Lucario and Dr. Jack Bright just being absolutely terrified of being around each other at that point.
Yep.
Because again, like you've been saying, a Lucario mind would probably be pretty terrifying to look into. But at the same time, you know Jack Bright's reputation. I don't think I would want to know what's going through his mind either.
Wait.
What'd you say right then? You cut out.
I said exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know so much if Lucario would be terrified of it, but Lucario would definitely be fucking just like.
Well, either way, the Lucario would probably still be like, can you get this guy away from me? I want him away from me. Can you please get him away? I don't want to be around him anymore.
Lucario would definitely still be like that, yeah. But the longer they take, the more the Lucario is going to get upset and pissed off, and then eventually the Lucario's willpower alone will just kick Jack Bright out of its body anyway. And then that's also not going to calm Lucario down if Lucario gets angry enough.
Well, technically,
because Lucario will then start turning against everyone.
Well, technically, as long as the Lucario is wearing the medallion, Jack Bright is just going to end up returning to the body. So the Lucario would just have to throw the medallion off of him.
Well, yeah, and that's what Lucario would do.
Just like one single day of them spending time with each other, they would be done.
Yeah, they're going to hate each other, definitely.
will probably not specifically hate each other, but at the same time would probably be extremely annoyed with each other. Just like, please get
Let's
get
not
the
do
other
that again.
get the other person away from me. They are. I don't even know at this point. I don't want to be around them.
See, I wouldn't blame Lucario for not wanting to be around Jack Bright after that.
Man, Jack Bright, if you had to share a mind with him, I wouldn't blame you for almost losing it.
And Lucario is one of those that would fucking lose its mind.
Man, imagine uh, an actual. Imagine if a fight actually broke out between a Lucario and a physical body of Jack Bright.
Rip to Jack Bright's body.
Well, he's still attached to the medallion, so all someone would have to do is just throw the medallion back on something, and there you go.
Probably wouldn't be Jack Bright's body, because with how mad Lucario gets... Yep, there's nothing left of that body.
Oh, you don't even want. Oh, you truthfully don't want to know what happens if you if you end up having Dr. Alto Clef and Dr. Jack Bright in the same room. You remember the total breach they ended up causing simply from being next to each other? Not to mention the fact that they
Yeah.
had a. For some reason now, there's a giant blob of mashed potatoes permanently stuck to the roof. How did that happen? No idea, but apparently it's anomalous now.
Actually, when it comes to that situation, there's a lot of Pokemon who wouldn't want Jack Bright in their body, and he probably wouldn't want to be in their body either.
Man, Jack Bright literally tried attempting to tame SCP-682. Jack Bright is not someone you want to share a body with.
Yeah. Luckily, he would not be able to try to tame. He wouldn't even try. Like, he wouldn't even be able to try to tame the body of someone like Dialga or Palkia.
Jack Bright.
But just imagine it.
Yeah, Jack Bright is literally the type of guy that would look at SCP-096's face just for the heck of it.
Yep.
You know he would do that 100%. I'm basically
Oh, hell
immortal as long as I have a body, so here we go.
Yep. And then he'd get into 096's body.
Actually, there hasn't been a test on that, so I can't say how that would work, but I mean, Jack Bright, just him himself, if he walked into 096's containment, he is literally the type of guy who would just look at 096 and just for the heck of it. He actually tried to start up. Huh?
Imagine what would happen if he tried to get into 173.
You know, Jack Bright actually let out some of the SCPs one time and tried to start an SCP fight club.
Yep.
There's so many things that Jack Bright has done. Literally, there's an entire list of things for Jack Bright not to do. That's literally probably about, oh, I don't know, 100 miles long. That's no joke.
I was going to say about more like 1,000 miles long.
Oh yeah, probably more than 1,000. Like literally, you can go on YouTube. There are so many videos of things Jack Bright is not allowed to do at the SCP Foundation. It's ridiculous.
Imagine if he did the same thing to Pokemon and tried to start up a Pokemon fight club eventually trainers are going to come from worldwide with all sorts of strong Pokemon. There are going to be that many that even the SCP Foundation will back down from it. No, thank you. We've seen what one Gigantamax Cinderace can do. No, thank you. We don't want to deal with that many.
Jack Bright would probably just be like, screw it. I'm going to give this a shot.
Oh, God.
Literally, Jack Bright will try literally anything. He literally basically is immortal for all time whatsoever, as long as the medallion is in one piece. So when you literally got all the time in the world, Jack Bright is going to try a lot of crazy stuff. And when I say crazy,
Yeah.
I mean stupid stuff.
He's still not quite as stupid as Lumpy, though.
Definitely not that stupid.
Yeah, because as we've already established, no one's as stupid as Lumpy.
Yep.
Oh my God, that just gave me a thought, though.
What?
Imagine Jack Bright getting killed by Lumpy.
Oh no. Let's leave other series out of the conversation.
Yeah, alright.
Considering how late it's actually getting right now, I think I'm gonna call it here in a minute or two, but before I actually end
Maybe
it,
we'll save that for a
have-
video idea for another time.
do you have any final remarks to end the video on? Like any extra ideas?
Not that I can really think of right now.
Well, okay. In that case, we shall call it. Anything you want to say?
Yep.
Like for an outro?
Oh, this has been our weird, random little discussion comparing SCPs and Pokemon. Do apologize for going off topic sometimes or any little inconveniences, but you know that's life for you. Throws you curveballs.
Yep. We're just about to finish it up. Anyways, what were you saying?
Just saying that, like, apologizing for any inconveniences and that's
yeah.
just life. Throws you curveballs.
If you all want to see a part 2, let us know and we'll see what we can do. For now, we're calling it.
And maybe give us some ideas in the comments too.
Yeah, like some suggestions for things we might cover if we decide to do a part 2.
Who knows? Maybe we might see what we. Who knows? Maybe we might see what happens if we compare Pokemon or or SCP Foundation to like other franchises.
Yeah. Anyways, good night to everybody. You all know what to do. Comment, subscribe, like, all that stuff.
You know how this works.
Bye-bye.
Later.